Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Jose Talk Sports, where it is a podcast for sports fans by sports fans. The date is Tuesday, May 17th, and the NBA Conference Finals begin today as the number 2 seeded Boston Celtics travel to Miami to take on the number 1 seeded Miami Heat. Now, as well as tomorrow, Wednesday, the Golden State Warriors will be taking on the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals, and that's where I want to start off today first, with the Western Conference. Let's wind the clock back. This past Sunday, the Dallas Mavericks, Phoenix Suns, Game 7. Now, it is said that two of the greatest words in sports is Game 7. And in this Game 7, the Dallas Mavericks would defeat the Phoenix Suns by a score of 123-90. And what was an amazing performance by the Dallas Mavericks, and quite frankly, a disappointing loss by the Phoenix Suns. This was a team that had high expectations all season. They wanted to return to the NBA Finals, just as they did last year, but it just wasn't meant to be. You look at the productivity that the Dallas Mavericks were able to produce. Luca Doncic, 35 points, 10 rebounds, 6 threes made. Spencer Dinwiddie coming off the bench, 30 points of his own, 5 three-pointers as well. Then Jalen Brunson, who has emerged as a star for the Dallas Mavericks in these playoffs, he would put forth 24 points of his own. When you compare that to the level of productivity that the Phoenix Suns had produced, it was no wonder that Dallas had won by so much. They had the largest lead they had was 46 points. And at halftime, they led 57-27. 27 points for the Phoenix Suns. Luka Doncic at halftime, 27 points of his own. He matched the productivity of the team. Chris Paul would finish with 10 points. Devin Booker with 11. DeAndre Ayton with 5. Now, when your big three combines for 26 points, that's not going to cut it. A guy off the bench, Spencer Dinwiddie, had 30 points, all combining more than what those big three had. DeAndre Ayton only played 17 minutes, and with him going into his contract year, he's going to be able to sign with another team, or as a restricted free agent, I should say. So if a team were to offer him a contract, Phoenix has that ability to match and just bring him back. So 17 minutes only in the game, especially when you're looking for a new contract, it's interesting. It's an interesting point to point out. What really stood out for me, though, Devin Booker and Chris Paul didn't make their first field goal until midway in the third quarter. The Dallas Mavericks were able to limit their offense. 10 and 11 points for their star guards. It's unfortunate. It really is. You look at Chris Paul's productivity in Game 1 and Game 2. He gave you 19 points in Game 1, 28 in Game 2, and then what followed was simply just a slow and steady descent into obscurity. Game 3, he had 12 points. Game 4, he had 5 points. Then he would go on 7 points, 13 points, 10 points. Luca alone averages 39 points per game in games in which he faces elimination. So it was no surprise that he put forth 35 points, and he had to rest most of the fourth quarter anyway because they were up big. In this series, he scored more points than Devin Booker. He had more assists than Chris Paul. He secured more rebounds than DeAndre Ayton and had stolen the ball more than Bridges. Luka Doncic, his productivity is unmatched. He was clearly the best player on the floor during this series. And it's no wonder, again, why the Suns fans were behaving the way they were behaving during Game 7. With a minute left in the third quarter, many of them were leaving the arena, just walking out on the team. Now, granted, I understand you don't like losing big, especially in Game 7 when the lights are on bright and everyone's watching at home. But you start walking out in the third quarter, it's a shame. My brother and I were watching the game on TV, and we're just amazed, not only by the Suns' inability to step up in a Game 7, but you look at the front rows, the floor seats, nearly empty, with the exceptions of small pockets of fans. At halftime, they were booing. What only one could surmise is booing the Phoenix Suns for just the lack of effort, the lack of points, the lack of success that they found against the Dallas Mavericks, who are going to make their first Western Conference final appearance since 2011, back when they won the championship with guys like Dirk Nowitzki, Sean Marion, and even current head coach Jason Kidd. The Suns, they led the series 2-0, not unlike the NBA Finals last year. But once again, they gave up another 2-0 series lead. Chris Paul's fifth time doing this. It does put a damper. It does put a little asterisk on his legacy, especially in the playoffs. Some people are even calling to question whether he is a valid candidate for the Hall of Fame. I don't think that's the case. I feel like he will make the Hall of Fame. I feel like he should make the Hall of Fame. But it's damaging his legacy at this point. And it's a shame that a guy like him, has to face such ridicule. And he'll be the first one to tell you that he didn't perform well. I know, I don't know the guy personally, but I know for a fact an athlete and an NBA star of his caliber is definitely going to hold himself responsible. You look at the post-game conference, Monty Williams wanted to take blame. He said, maybe I rode them too hard. Maybe I played them too many minutes during this season. And then that's what led to this eventual collapse. And Chris Paul was quick to defend his coach. He said, hey, that's coach. He's going to say those things, but at the end of the day, the NBA players, they're the ones that are on the court. They're the ones that are going to put forth the effort. And the fact that they lost that game in such remarkable fashion, I don't think it should be put as much blame on Monty Williams. Clearly, I'm of the mindset where everyone is held responsible. You got the head coach, you got the players, the bench, the stars, regardless. Everyone has some of the blame. But I don't think it's fair to give Monty Williams the majority of it. I do believe at the end of the day, you're looking at guys like Devin Booker, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, and others. I think that's where you got to look to. And it's not that they didn't want to win. It's not that they didn't want to be there. It's just they weren't prepared. I think back to the Canelo fight a couple weeks ago against Dimitri Bivol. And he wasn't prepared. You look at the analogies in boxing. Mike Tyson has one of my favorites. He says everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And that's what the Dallas Mavericks did. They punched Phoenix in the mouth. They asserted their dominance, and they took control of that game. They never let up. They never lost their lead. They never lost their cool. They maintained composure, and they exposed the Phoenix Suns. And then you see on the internet, they're fraudulent first seeds. It's a shame. And if they had won that game, they could have won that game by 1, the Phoenix Suns. They could have won the game by 1. And they still would be the number 1 seed. They still would be seen as, the best team in the league. But the fact that they lost the game, and they lost it in such, again, astronomical fashion, I cannot begin to tell you how disappointed I am. I'm not even a Suns fan. But on that night, I was just, wow, amazed, surprised, shocked. Use all the words you want. I probably felt it at one point. The fact that that's what happened in a game 7 where you're supposed to play your best ball, that's what they put forth on the court. And again, I do think Chris Paul deserves a brunt of the blame, but that leads me to this point. I want to wind the clock back. I want to go on a little storytelling here. The year's 2005. The Phoenix Suns have just won 62 games. And they're heading to the Western Conference Finals, taking on the San Antonio Spurs. They would lose in 5. The following year, they come back 54 wins, a loss in the conference finals. 2007, 61 wins, they lost in the semis. 55 wins, they lost in the first round. 54 wins, lost in the conference finals. There's a trend. This team has had great teams in the past. That Phoenix Suns team, Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire, Sean Marion, and others, that team is what really attracted me to the NBA, to basketball. That's what made me a fan. So part of me was rooting for these Suns, just because of the nostalgia, just because of what it meant to my childhood and what it meant to the game itself, especially in my eyes. And what followed these years of being a perennial playoff team was something no NBA fan can be envious of. In 2011, they fall to the 10th seed in the West, winning only 40 games. 2012, 33 wins. 2013, 25 wins. In 2014, they bring it back up to 48, and they make the 9th seed, don't make the playoffs, but they're climbing up. In 2015, they fall to 39. And because of falling to 39, they were the 10th seed in the West. And in that year's draft, they would select a shooting guard from Kentucky. You may have heard of him, Devin Booker. Following that year, 23 wins. 24 wins. And because of that 24-win season, in the draft, they were able to get DeAndre Ayton, center out of U of A. And they were able to get Bridges, a forward out of Villanova. In 2018, 21 wins. In 2019, 19 wins. The lowest win total since 1969, which was their first season as a franchise. They had won 16 games that year. So it was clear. The Suns, bottom of the barrel, among the worst teams in the league after having one of the best teams for several years. And it was a shame, especially for someone who has watched the NBA for so long and has really learned to love the game and its history, to see a team like the Suns, especially, for Arizona, they don't really have that much sports history per se. The Diamondbacks, they have a championship. They won the World Series. The Cardinals, yeah, they're a team in the NFL. But in terms of championships, Arizona doesn't have any really to hang their hat on, I should say. So it was clear. Change was needed. Something needed to go. Something needed to give. And the fact is, in 2020, because of the COVID, because of the coronavirus, they had to implement the bubble. After the bubble, the record was 34-39. Good for 10th in the West. But what's different? Something was different. Something was in the air. Something was different with this team. They had finished on an 8-0 run in the bubble. Not good enough to make the playoffs, but they nearly did. It was the first time they were in contention. It was the first time they sniffed at the playoffs in years. Something was different. And in that offseason, they were able to trade for Chris Paul. Now, of course, I don't think anybody was ready for the season that they would have, and the expectations weren't as high as they were this past season, but they did win 51 games. Good for the second seed in the West, right behind the Utah Jazz. And in the playoffs, they would defeat the Lakers in 6. They would dispose of Denver in 4. They would eliminate the Clippers in 6. And then they would meet the Milwaukee Bucks in the NBA Finals. Not only did they meet up with Milwaukee, they were leading 2-0. I remember it well. Suns in 4. Suns in 4, everyone was saying. It was all over the radio. It was all over the internet. You'd walk out to your local store, wherever. Suns in 4. The anticipation, the hype, it was real. Everyone thought this was it. This was the best shot for an NBA championship since Charles Barkley. The hype and the anticipation were at an all-time high. Little kids who had never even seen the game were talking about Suns in 4. Elderly were talking about Suns in 4. Everyone, Suns in 4. And what they didn't realize is it wasn't Suns in 4. It was Suns would lose the next 4 against Milwaukee, and they would lose the NBA Finals, and Giannis Antetokounmpo would be crowned the MVP of the Finals and the newest face of the league. Suns in 4, that's what they were all saying. But hey, you can't win them all, right? So what do? They look forward to the future. You can't just stop and stay in the past. You have to look toward the future and build. And in 2022, they would win 64 games, a franchise best. They took control of the league. They were by far the best team in the league. It wasn't a debate. But with that comes expectation, championships, dominance, something all the great teams had. And that wasn't the case. They led the Dallas Mavericks 2-0, just like Milwaukee a year ago. And once again, Suns fans. Suns in 4. Suns in 4. Well, that wasn't the case here either, because the Phoenix Suns exposed themselves. And to see on the internet, after the game, you want to see the highlights. You want to see what everyone's thinking. You want to see what everyone's opinions are. You're just curious, out of curiosity. And what do I see? I see Phoenix Suns fans burning the jersey of Chris Paul. Now, I'm not speaking to all Phoenix Suns fans because there are some good ones out there. But to those that were burning his jersey, what are you doing? If you don't want the jersey, sell it. Give it away to someone who would appreciate it. Where do you get off on burning a jersey? Those things do not run cheap. I'll be the first one to tell you that. Now, I understand you want to place the blame on him. I get that. But to burn his jersey and put it on the internet, you're exposing yourself. Chris Paul will be a Hall of Famer as soon as he retires. He'll be a first ballot. He's a 12-time All-Star, 10-time All-NBA, 9-time All-Defense, 5-time leader in assists, and a 6-time leader in steals. Those are impressive numbers, especially with the level of longevity that he's been doing it with. I was disappointed. I was disgusted that that's how you're going to, treat the guy that helped bring you back into relevancy. The Phoenix Suns were among the laughing stock for years. You want to talk about rally the valley, yet that's how you're going to treat your star point guard? Again, I'm not going to say he doesn't deserve the blame. He does deserve the blame. He did not perform. He did not show up, much like many of the players on the Phoenix Suns. But to see the fans behave that way, reminiscent to the way the Cleveland fans burned LeBron's jersey so many years ago in 2010. It's entitlement. It really is. And it's fan entitlement. And the word fan comes from the word fanatic. The point being, as fans, we feel like we have a sense of ownership of these teams. And I feel like that should not be the case. Not always. And there's not all fans like that. When you win with the team, it feels great. It's an all-time high. It's euphoric. But when you lose with the team, that's what really matters. That's where you really show yourself to be the fan that you really are. And the fact that there were some people who felt it necessary to do that. Disappointing. That's all I have to say. I'm disappointed in those fans. Not as a Suns fan, but just as an NBA fan in general. It isn't that deep for you to burn that jersey. And if anything, they should be used to it by now because the Phoenix Suns haven't achieved anything. Let's be honest. Let's be frank. They haven't. They've made the finals a couple times in the last 30 years. Nothing to show for it. And I'm sorry, but that's the harsh reality. They haven't. They don't have anything to show for it. They have 3 MVPs to their name in the last 30 years. Charles Barkley in 1993, Steve Nash in 2005, and in 2006. Really disappointed. I just wanted to share my 2 cents on it. And we'll see. We'll go from here. DeAndre Ayton could be receiving a new contract. Maybe he's not. We'll see what they do with Chris Paul. Devin Booker's not going nowhere. That's for sure. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. But we look forward to the teams that remain in the West. Luca Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks will be taking on the Golden State Warriors this Wednesday night. Luca Doncic, who is averaging 26 points per game in his entire career, he's proven to be a proficient and an elite offensive weapon for the Dallas Mavericks. But the one question I ask myself is, okay, we know what Luca's going to give us. This guy has a step back like no other, reminiscent of James Harden in his prime, who I will get to in a moment. But I ask myself, the supporting cast, Dinwiddie, Brunson, Kleba, are those guys going to be able to help to add in their own contributions. Because they were able to do so against Phoenix. But Phoenix and Golden State are different teams. As any other team would be. Everyone's unique. And matchups matter. This is the Golden State Warriors' 6th conference finals appearance in 8 years. They're proven. They have championship DNA. They have the experience. They have the veterans. And for that reason alone, I choose the Golden State Warriors to win this in 6. Call it bias, whatever you want to call it. But I look at experience. I look at the numbers. I like Golden State. I would have preferred a matchup against Phoenix because I feel like that was the marquee event. Any NBA fan will tell you that's the series they wanted to see. Unfortunately, the Dallas Mavericks ruined those plans. But hey, nonetheless, I do believe it's going to be an entertaining series. I look forward to it. You look at the numbers here. I'm a big numbers guy. Luca Doncic leads his team in points per game, assists per game, rebounds per game, steals per game, and he's third in blocks. He's a one-man wrecking crew. He's doing it all on his own. Not to say he doesn't have that help, but the fact that they're relying on him on all 5 aspects of the game is truly astounding. 31.5 points in the playoffs. Brunson provides 23 points per game. Dinwiddie, 13 points per game. Dinwiddie's going to up those numbers. He's going to have to in order to contend with the Warriors. You can't rely on just Luca and Brunson. They're going to have to find help from others as well. Because you look at the Golden State Warriors, Draymond Green, not a scorer. By any means, not a scorer. But what he's able to do with that team and lead and run the offense, he's running with 8 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists a game. All aspects of the game. Defensively, offensively, leadership-wise. I feel like Draymond Green is a very important part of that team. It's been proven. You look at a guy like Andrew Wiggins, 14 points per game. Jordan Poole will give you 19. Clay will give you 20. And so far, Steph has been giving you 27 points per game in these playoffs. The level of productivity that they're able to give you is unmatched. And I feel like that's why they are the overwhelming favorites in this series. Now, whether they win it or not, that's one thing, because Phoenix was favorites against Dallas. But I think they're going to be able to throw more at Luca. You're going to have guys like Clay, Wiggins, Green, throw in Kuminga. This is where I really miss Gary Payton II, because we're able to throw so many bodies at Luca. He's going to get his points. He'll probably average like 30 points each game, just because he's that much of an offensive juggernaut. But if you're able to slow him down, slow down his productivity, it's going to mean a lot to this team. I look forward to it. I'm excited for Dallas versus Golden State. That starts Wednesday. But tonight, we have the first game of the Eastern Conference Finals. The Boston Celtics are going to travel to Miami. The Boston Celtics are running on momentum right now off of their big Game 7 win against the Milwaukee Bucks. Jason Tatum with 23 points. But Grant Williams, the unsung hero and an emerging star, 27 points, 7 3-pointers to his name. And the 3-pointers proved very important to be in that series, let alone Game 7. The Milwaukee Bucks were only able to score 4 3-pointers versus Boston's 22. That's an 18 difference in 3-pointers. Clearly, that's where the numbers come from, right? Boston's making their 4th conference finals appearance since 2017. Miami, their 2nd since 2020, when they defeated the Boston Celtics in 6. This matchup isn't unfamiliar to many NBA fans. They can remember the battles that they had in the early 2010s. Miami versus Boston. It was the LeBron James, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade led Miami Heat against the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Boston Celtics. And just like those teams, these teams today, they're both deep and rich in rotation and culture. There's an expectation when it comes to these franchises. Winning is what they know. You have guys like Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra for the Heat, who have won the championship. They've been to the mountaintop before. They want to be there again. And then the Celtics, what more is there to say? They're basketball royalty. 17 championships, tied for the most in NBA history. Names like Larry Bird, Bill Russell, Bob Cousy, Paul Pierce. I could go on. synonymous with the history of the league. The Boston Celtics have always been there. Whether it was the 60s, 70s, 80s, 2000s, 2010s, they're always there. Now, a shocking fact, they've only won the championship once in the last 35 years. It was 2008. Kevin Garnett, you can remember him saying anything was possible. Well, the truth is, one title in 35 years, that's not impressive. It's a shame. You're heralded as one of the top teams in the league, top team in sports, and that's what you have to provide. You look at their counterpart in the NFL, the New England Patriots. They led the 2000s. Tom Brady and the boys walked away with 6 championships in less than 20 years. But the Boston Celtics only won in 35 years. Let's see if that changes. You look at the productivity they're getting from their team. Jason Tatum, 27 points per game in that Milwaukee series. Jaylen Brown, 22 points. Al Horford, the veteran, he gave us 30 points, 22 points in 2 different games. Really coming into his own. Really happy for Al Horford. Then you have Robert Williams when healthy. He's able to give you 10 and 9. And of course, I would be remiss in forgetting the Defensive Player of the Year, Marcus Smart, who plays a similar game to that of Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, Patrick Beverley, Chris Paul. Those really the players that get down and dirty, and you got to value those kind of players who are willing to do the dirty work. They're going to get physical. They're going to play the irritant, and they're going to get under the skin of the opponent. I have a special spot for those players, and I look forward to this series. They're taking on a Miami team who runs deep in the bench. But on the starting lineup, they have guys like Jimmy Butler, who's proven to play well in the playoffs. He's one of those guys you want on your team. He has the nickname Jimmy Buckets for a reason. He gives you 28 points per game in these playoffs. He's backed up by Bam Adebayo, their center. 14 points, 7 rebounds. Kyle Lowry, who has faced injury early on in these playoffs, but he's a veteran. He has experience. He has leadership. He's a guy you want on the team. Look to their bench. Victor Oladipo, 11 points off the bench. Tyler Hero, 13 points off the bench. And then there's Duncan Robinson, who's a good shooter. He can get you points. That's 3 players off the bench that can get you the same productivity of multiple players, of a whole bench, really, but only through 3 guys. Really excited for that series. In terms of predictions, I have Boston winning in 6. I do believe they dispose of Miami. I think it's going to be a great series. I would not be surprised if it goes to 7. But in this year's NBA Finals, I do have the Boston Celtics taking on the Golden State Warriors. Either way, that's a discussion for another day. Today, we have the Eastern Conference Finals. Tomorrow, the Western Conference Finals. I know I'll be watching it. I'm excited for it. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Final Four, NBA's best. And regardless of what the rotation is, or regardless of what the combination is of the finals, whether it's Mavs, Heat, Mavs, Celtics, Warriors, Celtics, Warriors, Heat, I don't care. I really think that this year's NBA Finals is going to be something to behold. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be fun. Looking forward to it. But still, since we're still on the topic of the conference finals, I did want to touch upon the new trophies. I don't know if anyone has heard, but they have new trophies developed and intended to be, presented at this year's conference finals. Not only will the team receive the conference championship, which they have been renamed. In the East, it is called the Bob Cousy Eastern Conference Championship, and in the West, it is the Oscar Robertson Western Conference Championship. But for each respective winner, they will also be awarded an MVP award. And in the East, it's the Larry Bird and Most Valuable Player Award, and then in the West is the Magic Johnson Most Valuable Player Award. And I think it's very fitting that they chose those two, athletes. They're synonymous with each other during the 80s. Magic Johnson making 10 appearances in the conference finals. Larry Bird making 8. Both are 12-time All-Stars. Both are 10-time All-NBA. But you look at the championships. Larry's a 3-time champion. Magic, 5-time. Larry's a 2-time Finals MVP and a 3-time League MVP, winning it 3 years straight between 1984 and 1986. Magic Johnson, 3-time Finals MVP, 3-time League MVP, and also led the league in assists and steals multiple times over in his career. Those are 2 guys synonymous with success and showing up in the playoffs. Not only have they proven to be the true legends that they are, but they've proven to be valuable commodities to their team. Guys you can rely on, guys you can trust in the playoffs. And when you want to make a deep playoff run, those are the guys you look to. And that leads me to our next topic, James Harden. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about James Harden. A lot of people know how I feel about him. They know how I feel about his play. And I wasn't really going to touch upon it because, they were eliminated last week. But being it's Tuesday, and a little bit of time, passes over between each episode, I thought this was a good opportunity to talk about him. Yesterday, I'm flipping through the channels, and I always go back to ESPN. That's one of the main channels that I watch. And I see Patrick Beverley, who had played with James Harden between the years of 2013 and 2017 on the Houston Rockets. And he's on First Take. And they're discussing the possibility of James Harden receiving a max deal with the Philadelphia 76ers. And Beverley is quoted stating, quote, "No hesitation about it. If you do hesitate about it, he will go somewhere else," end quote. That's in regard to the max contract. No hesitation about it. If you do hesitate about it, he will go somewhere else. Let him go somewhere else. I just flat out let him go somewhere else, because James Harden does not play in the playoffs. He's proven to come up small. You look at the series against the San Antonio Spurs when he was with the Rockets. You look at his time. Look at his time with Brooklyn. He didn't even get to play with them. He played half the season. And then his appearance with the Philadelphia 76ers in an elimination game gave you 11 points in the entire game. 11 points. When you look at his league, he led the league in points per game in 2018, 2019, 2020. All more than 30 points per game. Led the league, yet he only had 11 points in this game. Sure, in 2021, he fell down to 24. And in this past year, 22 points per game. And I'm all about numbers, so I like to support my arguments. And you look at him, sure, his field goal attempts had shrunk. He was taking 20, 24, 22 shots per game. With Brooklyn, it fell to 16. And with Philadelphia, it fell to 13. When you take only 2 shot attempts in the second half of an elimination game, naturally, people are going to question your effort and your heart, especially knowing what we know about James Harden. He can get the ball off at any point that he wanted. He's one of the best offensive weapons in the league. But only 2 shot attempts in an elimination game? And one thing I found interesting is he didn't take any free throws that game. And I've said for years, without those free throws, his numbers are going to go down, obviously. But he didn't attempt 1 free throw, and he finished with 11 points, 2 field goals attempted in the second half. It's unacceptable. You're supposed to be a star in this league. You want to be treated like a superstar. You want to get paid like a superstar. Yet in an elimination game, you're forcing a guy like Joel Embiid, who has a messed up finger, a fractured orbital bone. Clearly, he's struggling with his knees. You're forcing him to carry the load. And if James Harden's not performing and Embiid is struggling and your best player is Maxey, who lacks experience in the playoffs and is just too young for this moment, of course Philadelphia's going to lose. And I'm surprised they went to 6. I had them losing to the Raptors in the first round. I did not believe in this team, just like I didn't believe in Brooklyn. And they proved me right. And I don't mean to drag James Harden. By all accounts, he's an all-time player. He'll make the Hall of Fame. He's a member of the 75th anniversary NBA team. But I do not agree with Beverly's take that he should receive a max contract. I mean, with Philadelphia, maybe, at the very least. But in general, I would not give him a max contract. It's like Stephen A. alluded to. He had mentioned not only is a max contract is a compensation for what you've given me, but it's a projection of what you're going to give me. And I don't see it. I'm sorry, I don't see it. And there were times where a lot of people were saying that he was the best point guard in the league. I do not agree with that. I never agreed with that. Do I think he's one of the best scorers? Yes, I think he's an elite scorer. But I do not believe that he is a top player in the league. That's a discussion for another day. Speaking of days, in our last segment of the show, I like to take a look back in memory lane. Today in sports history. Now, I looked it up. Unfortunately, not a lot of things occurred on May 17th. Maybe something did and I missed it, but I'm going to look at May 16th, 1980. It's the NBA Finals. The Los Angeles Lakers defeat the Philadelphia 76ers without Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. This leaves Magic Johnson, a rookie Magic Johnson, to fill in at center. Keep in mind, he's a point guard. Filling in at center. He'd give them 42 points and secure 15 rebounds to secure a championship as well. The reason I bring this up is because it coincides with the HBO show Winning Time, which has gotten a lot of flack lately, from guys who were involved. Guys like Jerry West, guys like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson. Winning Time, for those who aren't aware, it focuses on the Showtime era of the Lakers. So we're talking Magic Johnson, Kareem, the 80s. And this first season focuses on the first championship that they won together. Me personally, I'm a fan. I enjoyed the show. There were times, yes, where I thought, okay, you're pushing it. It's a little bit going over the top. But that's what they do with show business. It's a television show, so naturally they're going to make things more exaggerated, really make it more drama to, attract audiences. For the most part, I thought it was fun. I do believe that they're making a second season, and I look forward to it. I was a big fan of John C. Reilly as Dr. Jerry Buss. Adrian Brody as Pat Riley really stole the show for me. I'm a big fan of Pat Riley, and I enjoyed his portrayal in that show. Solomon Hughes as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, phenomenal. I thought he looked just like him, his mannerisms. I thought he did great. Quincy Isaiah as Magic Johnson. For me, he really carried the spirit of Magic. He had the smile, he had the attitude, the charisma. It really translated well through the screen. But the reason I wanted to close out with that is for Pat Riley. Give him his flowers. For this championship, he may not have been the head coach. He was an assistant coach. But the fact that he was able to defeat the Philadelphia 76ers in this past NBA playoffs. And we look back to 1980. What is that? That's 42 years. Beating the 76ers again. And he has an opportunity to make another finals run. I think Pat Riley is one of the, if not, the best coach, maybe the best executive. His intelligence and his experience that he combines with his play, his coaching, his executive orders, whatever the case may be, and whatever role he played it well. And that's what's won him championships. He did it in Miami. He did it in New York. He did it in LA. Pat Riley is definitely someone that should be given more respect, and I feel like he already is given respect, but there's never too much for the Godfather. I look forward to tonight's game. Again, Miami Heat, Boston Celtics, Game 1, Eastern Conference Finals. I got the Miami Heat taking Game 1. I think they win Game 1, but I have Boston for the entire series in 6. Tomorrow night, Golden State Warriors, Dallas Mavericks. I think Golden State takes Game 1, and I pick Golden State to take the entire series all the way to Game 6. I look forward to it. I will see you guys on Thursday. We'll recap the games, and we'll look forward to the next set of games. Go ahead and you can find me anywhere on social media at justjose_3 for any updates on the show, if you just want to catch up. Thank you again for listening. Appreciate you guys. And as always, I will see you when I see you.